I'm Karima Brown. It's Sunday and it's time for The Fix. In the hot seat this week is veteran journalist Joe Thloloe about his report into editorial interference at the public broadcaster. And then we unpack the looming national health insurance, which has been welcomed in some circles and damned in others. We get a view from the state as well as a respected health journalist. And as is custom, we take a look at what's made headlines in the weekend newspapers and why. The Fix starts now. Welcome to this edition of The Fix, where every Sunday we hold the decision makers to account. We tell you why it matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. Now, the report into editorial interference could not find a smoking gun linking Luthuli House to what was happening at the SABC and what was regarded as editorial interference, and how the news was produced and presented to the majority of South Africans who only have access to the SABC as their main source of news and information during the time of Hlaudi Motsoeneng and former Communications Minister Faith Muthambi. Well, to discuss his report and to go into the methodology of how he came to his conclusions, I am joined by a veteran journalist, Mr. Joe Thloloe. He's, of course, the author of the report. Thank you so very much for joining me. I had the chair of the board in the hot seat last week because you had another engagement. Thank you so much for honoring the engagement this Sunday. Welcome to The Fix.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, the key issue that many people found interesting in your report was the fact that you made a point of saying that you couldn't find a smoking gun linking Luthuli House, as you put it, to what was going on at the SABC. How do you define a smoking gun, Mr. Thloloe?
In fact, that wasn't my key finding.
But you did say it.
But I did say there was no direct line where you could follow an instruction that was made at Luthuli House, follow it right into the newsroom. Mm-hmm. It was not possible.
Was that part of your terms of reference that you had to investigate?
No, I had to investigate whatever interference there was in the editorial decision-making.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you couldn't find a direct line from Luthuli House to what was happening, were you referring to a set of emails, a set of conversations, something on paper? What exactly were you referring to?
I was referring to somebody who would say, I got an instruction from Luthuli House to do this, and that's why I did it.
Mm-hmm. So given...
What we actually got was, there was always the feeling of ANC around the newsroom, but without any direct evidence of that.
So feelings, as we know, are intangibles, right? So if you couldn't come to the conclusion that there was a direct line, how did you come to the conclusion that there was a feeling that the ANC was in the newsroom? What constituted the things that constituted a feeling but couldn't give you a direct line?
The people who were giving evidence would tell us what happened, what effect it had on them, and what it had on the decisions they made. Mm-hmm. And everywhere you would get the sense that the ANC is dominant. Even the ANC itself, when it gave evidence at the inquiry, said that there were people who were misusing their name at the SABC. Mm-hmm. So they were aware that that is happening.
Okay, so this feelings that you talked about was referred to by the individuals that you've interviewed, right? Including the governing party that said there were people that misused their name. When you spoke with them, did you at any point ask the ANC if they ever wrote to the people who misused their name to say, stop dropping the ANC's name when you want something done because we're not instructing you?
I think we elaborated on that particular one, what the ANC claimed they had done, which we thought was very late, long after the problems of the SABC emerged. They claimed they wrote to the minister, they asked the minister to come and explain. they wrote to the executives of the SABC, but they did this after Jamie Matthews resigned as group executive of the SABC. So it was long after the horse had bolted.
So when they wrote to the minister at the time, was that Minister Faith Muthambi that they wrote to?
It was.
Now,
if you read the report, you will find there's a very elaborate explanation of that period.
The reason why I'm asking this specifically is because Minister Muthambi did not come to your commission of inquiry. What reasons did she forward?
We didn't ask her for reasons. We didn't ask her to come in. The invitation was to every South African who had information about interference at the SABC.
Mr. Thloloe, with due respect, don't you think that is a weakness in the report? Why would Minister Muthambi, given what happened at the public inquiry in Parliament, where she was in fact directly implicated and her matter was referred to the Ethics Committee, which by the way has still not resolved it and she remains a member of Parliament, why did you think that she would come to your commission out of the sheer goodness of her heart?
We didn't have powers to subpoena anybody. All we did was send out an invitation to South Africans broadly. And we said to them, if you have information about the happenings at the SABC, please come and talk to us.
In retrospect, do you regret that you did not insist on that being your terms of reference? Because essentially, if nobody came, you wouldn't be able to proceed with your inquiry. Mr. Motsoeneng was implicated in the parliamentary process, whom the SIU is looking at, and a whole range of other organizations also didn't come. And you knew, of course, that these individuals were not necessarily going to come there and tell you what they did, as was found in court papers as it regards to the sacking of the SABC 8, for example, as it was found in the public inquiry. Why did you not insist on the terms of reference giving you the powers to actually call to the Commission the people that you knew by prior investigations to have had a direct hand in what was going on at the SABC?
The SABC doesn't have the power to say subpoena so-and-so. As I said, they don't have that power. I don't have those powers. So in the end, it was an open invitation to South Africans. And the report actually gives a feeling of what it was to be in the SABC at the time. The pain, the trauma of being part of the SABC is all there in the report.
Yeah, I'm well aware of the pain and the trauma. We saw that when people got fired. We saw that when journalists protested and so on. So that finding, in many respects, Mr. Thloloe, is neither here nor there. I'm talking about actual accountability and responsibility, right? Now, you also said, for example, that the SABC is a wounded organization. It needs healing. It's not going to help to go on a witch hunt. How can you have healing in an organization without justice?
What has happened is that we did our investigation and we gave the report to the board. The board is going to decide whether to accept our recommendations or not, so that we have done our part.
Okay, the board has already decided that it's actually going to go after individuals. That's what Mr. Makatini said last week. But I want to draw your attention to something that is going to appear up on our screen. It's an email that I have here that was sent to SANEF, which is, of course, an organization that you're well familiar with. And it says on the email there that, as our readers can see, there are so many factual inaccuracies in the report that I have begun to wonder. Jimmy never came to the meeting with Ellen Chabalala and myself and Brian Molefe. It just did not happen. It's not true. And then it goes on to say, Sibolelo was not in the confrontation with Brian Molefe, Sophie Francis and Tabile Ngwato, just not there. Now, Mr. Matthews comes in for quite a lot of critique in your report. And he's, of course, also didn't take up your invitation to come to the commission. Now, how do you put Mr. Matthews in a meeting with Ellen Chabalala on the question of Mr. Brian Molefe when a staffer at the SABC that this matter concerns directly contests who was present in that meeting?
I think we shouldn't divert the issues that we should be looking at. The point here is that Jimmy Matthews dictated an apology to a typist and asked Thandeka Qubule to sign that apology, which she did reluctantly. She signed it, but she was extremely reluctant. The point is that Matthews was succumbing to pressure from outside the SABC.
But people, people
issue.
Succumbed before before him dictating the letter. And even if he did dictate the letter, I want you to answer my question. Was Mr. Matthews in that meeting where Thandeka Qubule was asked to apologize to Mr. Brian Molefe with Ellen Chabalala?
Okay. Jimmy was not at that meeting. Sibulelo was not at that meeting. But Jimmy came in the day after to actually dictate the letter of apology.
So why does the report put Jimmy in the meeting and Sibulelo in the meeting?
It was a typographical issue. The point is that I put Jimmy in the meeting when in fact he was not in the meeting.
But why did you do that?
No, as I say, it was a mistake on my part.
But it's a material mistake, isn't it?
The essence of it is it doesn't change the material finding in any way.
No, I get that, but that relates to Mr. Matthews. But there were other people in that meeting. For example, Sophie Mokoena. What exactly was her role with Ms. Ellen Chabalala, Mr. Brian Molefe, and Thandeka Qubule? What did she do in that meeting? Did she insist that Ms. Qubule apologize to Mr. Brian Molefe? Did Ellen Chabalala insist that this must be done? Do you know this? Have you been able to establish this as fact?
No, as I say, I was merely quoting what Thandeka Qubule told us at the inquiry. But as I say, there was a mistake in quoting Jimmy as being in the meeting and Sibulelo also being in the meeting.
Mr. Thloloe, without getting too granular about this one meeting, but it's material because, of course, you find that Mr. Matthews was the one that succumbed. But we had a gathering of individuals, and we had Mr. Brian Molefe, Ms. Thandeka Qubule, Ms. Frances Hurd, Sophie Mokoena, Ellen Chabalala in a meeting. What exactly happened in that meeting? What was the fact of what happened? Who instructed, if at all, Ms. Qubule to apologize to Mr. Molefe before Jimmy Matthews dictated the letter?
It is in the report. It says that Ellen Chabalala was insisting that, one, Thandeka should apologize to Brian Molefe, and two, that she should fire Francis Head. It is in the report.
Okay, so it is in the report. So if it's in the report, why are you saying that it's Mr. Matthews that succumbed to pressure and not Ellen Chabalala misusing her role as being a board member, because she had absolutely nothing to do with the running of the SABC. And there's a very clear court case that actually returns the powers of the board away from the shareholder, and she doesn't have the right to interfere editorially, and of course she doesn't have the right to instruct Thandeka Qubule to fire Frances Hurd.
That comes out very clearly in the report, that Ellen Chabalala used her position to bully the newsroom. It comes out very clearly in the report.
Okay. Now, the question of Ms. Sibulelo, she has, of course, left the SABC again, and she's no longer there. You also say there's also questions that she wasn't at the meeting. Now, the reasons why these people are important is Sibulelo was the head of radio at the time. And, of course, the radio head had access to all the language stations of the radio. So it has an important material bearing. How did the factual error occur to put Sibulelo in a meeting that she was not in?
Karima, this is very interesting that we are looking at a minute area, and yet the picture that's painted in the report is the picture that you also have in mind. You know what happened. Now, I don't know why this attempt to try and focus on this very specific names, etc. I did say that these were mistakes.
Okay, let me put my cards on the table.
Right.
I'm asking why these mistakes happened because there are staffers at the SABC who believe that your report is factually full of holes. And because it's factually full of holes, its recommendations and its findings is problematic. And it's a matter that I put to Mr. Makatini, and I asked him how they're going to deal with it. Now, what I would like to know is these letters have gone to SANEF. You are familiar with SANEF. Has SANEF been in touch with you, Mr. Thloloe, to ask you about some of the inconsistencies that members of the SABC staff who are currently still working there have raised in relation to the report, and what's been the engagement with BU and SANEF?
None whatsoever. The situation at the moment is that the report has been handed over to the board, and it's the board that is going to decide on what recommendations to accept, what findings to accept, what to act on and what not to act on. Now, but SANEF has not come to me directly to say there are problems with your report.
That I find interesting because, of course, this is a letter that is dated the 7th of August. And it was sent to Kate Skinner and Mahlatsi Gallens. Now, both of these are, of course, senior members of the organization. So you have not heard from them in terms of the complaints that have come as a result of the findings or the procedures of your report. So as far as you are concerned, SANEF has no problems with you.
No, as far as I'm concerned, I have handed over the report to the board, and the board is going to decide on the future.
Now, let's come to the minister at the time, Ms. Faith Mutambi. The fact that she was so central in what came out at the report or the process into the happenings at the SABC that was televised live on TV. I mean, you've obviously had access to that. The report speaks of Ms. Mutambi. I mean, I read the report in one instance, for example. She insults an SABC staffer for the way she's dressed, the fact that she's late, but more than that, she says, I own you. You report to me, you know. And of course, we know that that is not true. Now, we've got another situation where the current Minister of Communications, Ms. Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, recently put her hand in front of a camera at an ANC event and effectively censored that cameraman from taking pictures of what goes on there. How do you make sure that the recommendations in your report regarding the role of the shareholder is understood in its proper legal and proper media ethics and media code, the code that guides us all? How do you make sure that no minister after Ms. Mutambi, don't abuse their power? Because clearly, the current minister hasn't learned from her predecessor.
Karima, you're asking me to look into an area that I'm not able to. The fact is that I have made recommendations, we have made recommendations, and we believe that if those recommendations are followed, the anybody outside the newsroom will be kept outside the newsroom. We do say in the report that any South African has the right to try and influence coverage by the SABC, but the final decisions will always be made in the newsroom. And we have suggested that this should be made part of the editorial policies.
Now, I'm aware of that. A final question in relation to that. Now, people talk about certain individuals as enforcers. You've mentioned a couple of people that were appointed irregularly, but your report gives them a second chance. Your report says they have the right to reapply for their jobs. Why would you give them the right if they were complying with illegal editorial policies and they were regarded as enforcers?
Again, we don't read the report selectively. What we say is that the whole SABC is in pain. People are scratching out each other's eyes out. There is a lot of fighting internally, not only between the seniors and the juniors, but right round, it's just unhappiness. And we are saying they should go through a process of team building, trying to heal all that pain that they have suffered.
Can there be healing without justice?
There can be healing without justice.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so very much, Mr. Thloloe, for your time and, of course, for the work that you've put in at the SABC. It's been a great pleasure to have you here on The Fix. After the break, we unpack the contentious issue of the National Health Insurance. Don't go anywhere.